go figure. Like right when you don't need it, you get some technical difficulties because Twitter doesn't like something. Whatever. Uh, Welcome back, everyone. We are in the Leadership Network interview of the month. Haven't done these in a little bit, and I said, well, if I'm gonna do this, what kind of experience, what kind of um, attitude, and what kind of stories could I bring so that everybody can hear? And I twiddled my thumbs for a little bit, and then I met this person right off the bat. It was there were stories, there was injections. It was then we meet again, and then we meet again, and I'm like, all right, Victoria, stop the noise. Let's get you on. Welcome to the Leadership Network. I'm not gonna lie, fascinated by the stories and the pieces and everything else. But what really interested me the most was the fact that, and I gotta do this whole thing. I gotta swap people out so nobody needs to see my big head. Was the topic, and just we only pick a top level topic, right? We don't go deep into questions and this. I'm like, I don't have time to be doing that. So we're riffing for the next 58 minutes, and you
Fantastic.
picked human factor of of all the crazy. Let me rephrase that. Of all the nuttiness, I don't want to be offensive to folks. I know I'm nuts as all hell. Uh, Security, IT, infrastructure, all of it. We keep forgetting about one piece. There's typically human behind it, the good and the bad side of it. But before we get riffing on that, why don't you give us the Twitterverse, the original OG Twitterverse, 140 character version of who you are, where you're at, and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Victoria Doring. I am the president and director of InfraGard Nevada, which is a partnership with the FBI focused on critical infrastructure security. So we work with like dams, power, nuclear, all that kind of stuff to make sure that, you know, private businesses are working well with our law enforcement partners to ensure that those things are kept secure in the best manner that we possibly can. As a result of that, I've been able to get exposed to a lot of human failures, as well as through my other work as a chief information security officer and as a physical penetration tester, social engineer.
All right, all right, hold on. So most people's resume reads corporate America, maybe a startup, maybe this, maybe that, maybe this. You're talking nation state shit. You're talking global shit. Let's just be real here. Okay. So how do you step into that? Like, was it like, hey, I want you to introduce you to so and so. Like, what was the journey? Because I'm picturing it. Everybody can go into Victoria's LinkedIn and follow the journey. But how does somebody step into all of a sudden nation state infra world?
So it actually started out when I was working for the Cosmopolitan of Las Vegas, which is one of the major strip casinos. And while I was working there, it was during New Year's Eve one year, and I got a chance to have a really good conversation with some of the local law enforcement partners and federal law enforcement that was involved as well, with a temporary command post that had been set up on property there. And that's really where I kind of got my first exposure to InfraGard. I joined around 2017, and since 2020, I've been taking on progressively more responsibility with the board of directors, up to president
So
now.
so as much as I don't like to gamble, right? But I do
Mhm.
gamble on a lot of things. So basically, what you're telling me is just hang out in casinos and start conversations, and then see how what kind of
Well,
introductions. No, that's not.
no, no, not quite. So this is like backroom type stuff. It's not. It's out of the eye of the public spaces of the property where these
Wow.
types of environments get set up. But it was really fascinating to me to see, the level of planning and everything that went into creating this kind of temporary command post. And it really was. kind of my first like, wow, I want to be involved in this. I want to know how I can help these people, keep the tens of thousands of people that come to Las Vegas for New Year's safe. And that's when I kind of got introduced to InfraGard and started learning more about their mission. And then later on, we'll talk a little bit later about some of the stuff I've done in fintech where, I had really good relationships with some of the Secret Service folks in Las Vegas, helping them identify and
Get
apprehend
you.
folks. And it was,
Everybody who's listening to this, like, oh my god, that's so cool. Me being number one fan right now. Um, okay, so I remember a couple stories from the past folks that I've talked to. Right, there's folks who've got nation state, clearance, this, that, the other. But I remember very specific to kind of this path that you're talking about, like the scope, scale, size, and the impact. I remember somebody telling me, I don't remember if it was most recently was there was a senior role for the LA 2028 Olympics. And I just thought to myself, like, mind blown. You've got pre-planning, you've got, a period of time, the scale, the scope, the size. Like, I cannot imagine the mega gigabytes, terabytes, zettabytes that are being generated in digital, logs and transactions, and then the systems involved in that, the budgets involved in that, let alone the physical security, the video, and everything else. Now we take that, in my mind, maybe to a slightly smaller scale, but on a regular basis, is a casino,
Mhm.
right? And then you take, maybe, one of the slowest periods of the year, New Year's Eve, casino, right? So I'm envisioning like literally war games command center kind of, 82 monitors, da 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 da. Walk us through the logistics of how you just have to be bullshitting about, hey, yeah, InfraGard.
Well, so when I was there, specifically, I was manager of IT infrastructure. So ensuring that, they had all the connectivity that they needed for this temporary command post. I I'm a little bit hesitant to talk specific, setups and tactics, techniques, procedures for surveillance that they use. But I was impressed to the point that I wanted to know how I could be more a part of that. And through InfraGard, we've gone on to start doing tours of the Southern Nevada Counterterrorism Center, which is absolutely next level in its capability. And the things and capabilities that they have are impressive. And it definitely makes me feel safer, knowing what those capabilities
Wow.
are, because there is definitely a watchful eye and caring people behind it.
All right. All right. I'm fanboying over this whole concept because we've got a range of folks that'll listen to this, right? We've got folks
Mhm.
who are like, been there, done that, never want to do that. Then we've got folks like, oh, that'd be an interesting segue into my career. Then we've got folks who's like, I don't understand the con. Then we have folks who are like me, sitting here eating popcorn, thinking this is a fucking movie, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
this is not
Taking
real. This is
notes.
so distant from me that I don't think I would ever get to that. Walk us through the years that it took to land in an infrastructure job to then continue on after that. Walk us through the
Yeah.
the roles, the headaches, the people you've met, the drama you've had to deal with, the bullshit you had to deal with, the sleepless nights. Oh my gosh, I'm so.
Well,
Ooh.
what makes it even more surprising that I ended up where I'm at is I actually started by opening a recording studio. When I was in college, I opened a commercial recording facility in California, and I couldn't afford an IT person. So I decided that, you know what, I'm going to become the IT person. And as home recording got more accessible, I looked at my buddy that has worked for a school district here in California since seventh grade. And he was like, you should probably look at doing IT as a job. And I was like, nobody will pay me to work on computers. And he's like, oh,
Worst
yes,
decision in your life.
they will.
Oh, did I
So,
say that out loud? Shit, I thought I was off camera.
but I mean, it's been a really fun and interesting progression, right? Because I went from, having a media background and limited resources, which has really come in handy throughout my career, because I mean, you've worked with companies. Obviously, budget is always a concern for things, and being able to identify how to do more with less is been a really great asset for me. So,
You're
but yeah,
funny.
so
I've
after
always had
that,
all the budget and resources I needed.
right,
Right. I
yeah.
let's put it this way. I had hair when I first started in IT and security. Uh,
Hey, I mean, mine didn't
wow.
always wasn't always gray. So, um,
Wow.
but yeah, so I went from there to working for a real-time captioning company, helping them figure out how to get, real-time captions done with satellite feeds and remote court stenographers actually that were connected with dial-up modems into the studios, which was interesting.
For all of you young people, dial-up modems were these devices that you connected to. Never mind. Sorry. We'll
Back when
have
we
that as a
had phone
segment.
lines,
Listen, when I had to take two modems, my personal line and my extra line, and use Win proxy so I could get twice the bandwidth because I didn't get high speed access where I used to live back in New York. You know, you know things are really bad. Like,
yeah.
oh my
Oh
gosh,
yeah, my first internet connectivity, you had to put the phone in the audio coupler. So,
you were old school war games.
mhm.
Oh damn. Oh,
Back when you used to have to
I
change
don't
the
think I ever
cartridge
got.
on the side of the printer for the different fonts.
Uh, so I gotta showcase. Kiss wants to know where the AOL jingle is. I will say between Prodigy, AOL, and I I had I remember in college to get onto the mainframe, I didn't have the right simulator.
Mhm.
So it was shifted by like four lines. So the top was over here and the bottom was over here. So I always had to keep doing this, or I'd haul ass to the computer lab. It was so bad, so bad. But you were coupler mode. That is okay, ma'am. First of all, you look too damn young to be coupler mode. All right, so you're holding up pretty damn well to
Well,
be in
thank you.
coupler mode. I'm just saying. Me, on the other hand, I look like I was like chiseling shit on stone. I'm just in order to get messages out. Wow, wow, that is okay. So you work. I don't even know where the hell I was. So you're working through coupler mode to modem to, and you're going through. You decide you a recording studio. You went from recording studio, becoming your own IT person, to then like, yeah, I guess this is a cute hobby that pays me, right? Walk
Yeah,
us
for the
through the
most
next
part.
steps.
Yeah, so I went and worked for the captioning company, and then shortly after that, I moved to Las Vegas. I've been there since 2007, and was working for an HOA management company that had 10,000 some odd users across North America and Canada, US, and Mexico. And that's really the first kind of exposure to security on scale that I had, and started working through doing like employee misconduct investigations and forensics, and data recovery. They flew me all over the place for mergers and acquisitions, where I had to take disparate systems and make them all work together. Um,
Right.
and it really gave me a broad exposure to different technologies and different methodologies, and also exposure to a lot of mistakes that were made by people, right? Best of intentions. Um, but that's really where I started seeing like, okay, well, it doesn't matter how much you spend on the IT stuff if the people behind it are either inattentive or inexperienced or something like that. And I started kind of studying the whole social engineering aspect of things because as part of mergers and acquisitions, right? Obviously, it's important to get as much information as you can about a potential acquisition. And so starting to learn how to get the information and answers that you need in order to make it a successful either acquisition or to pass on it is really important. So studying
Oh
that
my
human
gosh.
behavior has been a huge asset.
I M&As are cute if you're only focused on dollars, cents, assets, and what's on the balance sheet. But you touched upon one of the things that this is what I don't know how we're going to cover all this shit in an hour, but this is why I wanted to make sure we talked about this is personalities, egos, and all of the other things that come with M&As on how do you integrate, and unfortunately, who do you keep, who you don't keep? Is it its own line for a year or two until you really do integrate? And all of those pieces become a critical factor in just running a business. But for the world we live in, is infrastructure, security, at physical, digital, and everything else. Like I'm not gonna lie, I've been a part of NMNAs where they didn't know how to spell security,
Right.
and
Yep.
it was a culture shock. What do you
Yeah.
mean my password can't be 5 characters? like it's got to be a little bit more than that, right?
Well, and especially, when you start talking about things like HOA management companies, right? Because they
Right,
have people's financial information for, people paying their monthly payments for HOA dues. We have
right.
special assessments that we charge for. And then the other thing too is just the large amount of PII, the personally
Right.
identifiable
Let me just
information.
take a break here. We've got a little bit of a clip. Folks, see that again. Wait, sorry. All right. So I had noise canceling, so I don't know if I heard all the noise in the background. I don't know if y'all heard it, but
Looking to see if my buddy list came up there.
but thank you, Kim, for reminding me of yes, the amount of time it took to connect. So sorry, I had to download that in the background. That was yeah, the shit that I do during the show is insane. Um, but the people, right? The people we forget, and one of the most frustrating things, and maybe this is something we can segue into. One of the most frustrating things that I've been at the front end, right? The balance sheets, is it the right technology? Is it is there growth? Is it the right value add for the M&A? But then I've also been on the other half of it, which is not necessarily the who to keep, who to not keep. It's really like the stress of the people who have to live through that's probably not the first time they heard that there was going to be an M&A or divestiture or whatever. So how much do you invest in 100%, 200% of your efforts to make sure an organization is secure, this, that, the other, versus they're going to be selling us and my job is probably gone anyway, right? Because they're going to outsource it, they're going to downsize me. So walk us through like what you've seen in the mental components around whether it's you, teams, other companies, and kind of anything like that, because it's a real stressor, right? The
Right.
market is what it is right now, right?
Yeah.
So when and I guarantee you for the next year or two, you're going to see a ton more consolidations. How have you seen it that you've been able to cope or help others cope with that kind of mental stress?
A lot of it comes down to, just making sure that people don't get ahead of the cart. Making sure that they understand that change isn't immediate, and that there's a lot of value in the knowledge that they have about, the company if they're on the side of the business being acquired. And then two, ensuring that things are handled in a professional and respectful way from the acquiring company, to make sure that there's good communication around ensuring people feel like they're not being told what they did before was wrong.
Right.
So,
Right.
coming in and having an outside party from a larger company start assessing your organization and your technology and policies and procedures, that can come off kind of adversarial or make it feel like, you're saying something was done incorrectly. But the vast numbers of ways that things can be done correctly is a
Right.
big reason why, as an assessor, because I'm also a PCI QSA, it's a big reason why a lot of times you'll hear assessors say, "Well,
Send
it
your hate
depends."
mail to Victoria at assessorhater.com. Don't send them to
Right?
me. I'm just saying.
Yeah, yeah. Blame me for all your assessment and audit woes. Um, but no, really, it's surprising how many different ways there are to do things to meet the intent of controls, even if it's not necessarily meeting the letter of a control, right? And it's important to point out and recognize that, both to the employees of the company that you're acquiring, but also to the leadership in the company that's acquiring the company. Because a lot of times, too, you get to a certain level in a company and you have your way of doing things, you expect things to be a certain way. Not everybody has the resources to do it that way. And being able to kind of bridge that and explain to executives that, okay, I mean, this might be kind of a hokey setup here, but look at all of these things and creative ways they found to get around not having the resources to spend, $10,000 on a Splunk license.
You mean you never had to be the MacGruber of IT and security with a stick of gum, a paperclip, and something else to
Oh,
be
I
able to get
have.
shit done?
I have. Well, one of the M&As I was at, we were going in and doing a whole technology refresh, and I had flown in a day early, and I went into the office to kind of take a first look at it so that I could kind of get an idea overnight, sit and think on it about how I wanted to get started the next day. So I'm in their server room and I go to, there's a bunch of cables hanging down from the ceiling. I go to move a cable gently to the side so I can look in the back of the rack ever so gently. That was a big mistake because it was one of the RJ45 jacks, like the Keystone jacks that you punch down the cables on. Yeah, they didn't punch it down. They had just pushed them on there. Yeah, and come to
Shit.
find out that was the main T1 for the office. And the other side of that cable was in a shared wiring closet for the building. And what makes it just that much better is that they didn't use standard color coding on that cable. So all I had to go off of was the link light on the router and randomly punching wires down with I only had about that much extra cable that I had to work with and strip back. But I got it working, and everybody came in the next morning and were none the wiser. But that was the first thing that I made sure we replaced.
Wow. I was hoping you were telling me that they were all scrounging around trying to clean up and repatch or like it's like
Oh
they're
no, I've
trying to
definitely
get all
seen
the
that
food
too.
out of the server room, right?
Yeah, I've definitely seen that too. I've
Oh,
seen servers in bathrooms before at some of the companies that we've acquired in different companies. So yeah, it's surprising what you find.
I remember one of my first gigs. We moved into a new office and they set up a server room with its
Mhm.
own temperature control, except the thermostat was broken and it was set on 50.
Oh
So if
geez.
I had to do any work in there, it was with a effing parka because it took, and this was I believe it was in the winterish. Yeah, it was in the winter because I remember it was in the winter time. So here I am in the server room trying to figure out a few things, trying to set up some new racks, trying to, and freezing my I'm like, why is the office hot? I can't leave the door open. It's a damn server room. I'm like, this equipment will last forever and ice will start to culminate if I add any humidity into this room. They finally fixed it after like, I don't know, 3 weeks. But um walking into all of these type of scenarios, you I'm just picturing you just moving the cable a little. I'm picturing like a brownout. I'm like, where are the computers? All the cameras are off. You have this magic touch, Victoria, apparently, that you
Yeah,
could just bring
apparently.
down whole systems.
Mhm.
But uh, so as you're going through all of these kind of experiences well, actually, let me take a step back. So what happened the next day? Like who did you meet? What did you see?
I mean, at that one, it was pretty run of the mill, other than obviously the terrible infrastructure that they had at the physical layer. But yeah, other than that, it was very easy. what does this say? Spreadsheets are the stick and gum of cybersecurity. I agree. I
MacGruber,
absolutely
MacGyver.
agree.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tim.
Um, Yeah, but yeah, it was a pretty run-of-the-mill M&A other than that. But honestly, that doing the M&A work really showed me how trusting people are, right? Because I was flown in by corporate to offices where I had never been before. Nobody knew me. I didn't know them. I didn't know anything about the layout of their office. But yet, getting back into the server rooms was trivial, right? You just show up and you say, "Hey, I'm
Wait,
here
yeah.
because of so and so. I need to look at this. I was told to talk to this person," and all of a sudden they're walking you through the office and leaving you alone in a server room. And you would think, right? You would think that that's more from the smaller company aspect, but I have a story from one of the assessments that I did doing a employee misconduct investigation. I was tasked with getting access to a surveillance department at a casino. And you would think surveillance is going to be super secure, right? I mean, they're the watchers, they're the ones with
Right.
all the cameras. Um, so I had done a little bit of research on Google and found a white paper about this specific property and one of the systems that they implemented. So I just called up and I said, "Hey, my name is so and so. I'm calling from this company. We heard we got an alert that there was a hard drive out in one of your systems." And I said,
No.
"I need to swing by and replace the hard drive." And he's like, "Oh, okay. Have you ever been to the surveillance department here before?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Oh, okay. Well, just when you get here, go back behind the front desk, take the elevator up to floor 2.5, walk down the hallway, pick up the phone, say who you are, and we'll let you in." I was like,
You
"Oh, okay,
social
thanks."
engineered your way in there?
Oh,
Hold
it gets better, Mel. It gets so much better. Well, better
on,
depending
I gotta
on
make
who
some
you are in
popcorn.
that
Hold on.
scenario. So I do just that, right? First, I grabbed a hard drive because I told them I was there to swap a hard drive, right? Brought along some other tools that I have in my arsenal. And when I got to the door and they let me in, I noticed that they had put a piece of duct tape over the electronic strike on the door plate.
Shut up.
Um, so you literally could have just pulled the door open to begin with. So the guy walks me into their air gapped network data center, right? Because surveillance is supposed to be totally independent, separate. Um,
There.
walked me in there, and then he's like, "I really hate to do this, but I got to run to a meeting. Are you going to be okay here for like 15 minutes?"
No.
And I was like, I don't know. Like, I know you're supposed to escort me, and I don't want you to get in trouble. Can you at least give me your cell phone number so if I get done early, I can call you so you don't get, in trouble for me walking out of here alone? And he was like, "Oh, that's a good idea." And I was thinking, like, dude, I'm so sorry for what's about to happen. Um, and so, once the guy left, I started opening up all the KVM drawers around in their little data center there and happened to find one logged in as an admin. And this was number one, it was a few years back, right? So, system protection wasn't what it was. Mimikatz was easy, which is a tool that allows you to see the password of all the logged in users. But two, it's another one of those scenarios where we've now got three instances where a human could have stopped this, right? They could have asked more questions or for identification. They could have not left me alone. They could
Wait,
have
wait,
not
wait, wait,
relied
wait,
on the
wait, wait,
fact.
wait, wait, wait. You glazed over that one. They didn't
Which
even
one?
ask you for identification?
Oh no, no, they didn't even ask me for identification,
Oh,
which was kind of a bummer, Mel, because I have a badge printer at home and I had actually printed myself a photo ID
I
for
haven't.
the
Okay,
company that I
can we just
purported to be
pause
from.
here again? Did y'all hear what I just heard? I have a badge printer at home.
They
Man,
come in handy, you know? You see one, it's used, it's on Craigslist, maybe it puts little dots
you
on there, but who
just
cares?
change your LinkedIn title to social engineer. Like just wow.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
God.
So,
Sorry.
and then the next thing that could have stopped it, right, is not relying on the fact that this was an air-gapped network for security, you know, because the assumption was that no one would get physical access, so they left things logged in as admin. The assumption was that it's air-gapped, so there's no threat from, malware tools.
Duct tape or black tape? What was holding the
Duct tape, the nice silver kind, easy to see. Non-reflective though, unfortunately. But Yeah, so I ran Mimikatz. I got passwords. They were nice enough to label the front of all of their systems with the IP address, and they used a common password amongst several of them. One of which was a file server. One was a domain controller for their air-gapped little network they had there. And what was really cool is on the domain controller they had an IIS web server running with a MySQL backend for all of their custom code for bringing up cameras on all the different displays. Well, Mel, what do you think I found in that database?
Afraid.
I found usernames, unencrypted passwords, RFID badge numbers, and facility IDs. I found, it was first name, last name, personal email address, which was really great because now, right, I have the knowledge that I can just pull the front door open. I have knowledge of an admin password, and I have knowledge of user passwords and their
Who you
RFID
can
badge numbers.
impersonate, who you can. Oh my
So,
God.
as I mentioned, I have a badge printer at home. So, being able to, print on one of these rewritable badges and
This is
basically
not an
emulate.
endorsement to go on the dark
Yeah,
web to
don't
buy
do
a
this. Don't do
badge
this.
printer. Just
Don't
want
do
to be
this.
clear.
Only if it's sanctioned and you're getting paid for it. Um, by the company, not by the bad actors. Um,
Right.
so yeah, I was able to get access to a lot of information, and one of the things that they had on that file server was backups of all their configuration files for their Cisco devices,
Stop.
which was
Stop. Stop.
back in the
Stop.
reversible password encryption days for Cisco.
I'm going to throw up if you say you found more. I'm just
Oh,
literally going to throw up.
oh, there's so much more, Mel. There's so much more. It's
One
this,
instance.
yeah.
One. Oh
This was
my God.
one visit. But it's one visit because I didn't have to go back, right? Because I had the admin password for the
They
switch.
closed
Now
the
I can turn
shop
up
and
a port.
they fired everyone.
Well, since now I have admin credentials on the Cisco, it's easy for me to turn
You
up a
don't even
port
have to
and
go.
drop a Wi-Fi access point.
Oh my dear.
You can see where this is going. You can see where this is going. So I had complete unfettered access to all of the surveillance for the casino property, all of the information from the player tracking and rating system, including who their whales were, with real-time overlays on how much each player was spending and what their lifetime and average bet was. Um, I also had access to, everybody's personal information through using their personal username and password on this air gap network. Um, and getting access to the
You
cameras
say
was,
air gap, but I keep hearing airhead.
yeah, yeah.
What the
I would
flying?
tend to agree with you. I would tend to agree with you. Now, most of the time when I do assessments like this, I work very hard to ensure that things become teachable moments, right? I did this for an airline too, and I made sure that it was a teachable moment. I don't want people to get fired, right? Because I'm specifically preying on people's kindness most of the time when you're doing social engineering like this. And so making it a teachable moment and telling people kind of how they have been had and how badly usually will create lifelong change in that employee, and they will be a much better employee, right? Um, but in certain instances, like this one specifically, what I found out and the level of gross negligence definitely created resume generating events for more than one individual. So,
I hope more than one individual,
yeah,
because this is a systematic issue. If
right,
no one has my 20-year-old daughter probably has more insights into controls and security than apparently this team
right.
does.
Yeah, and you would think that this level of unpreparedness or this lax security would be limited to, you know, small business or even just private businesses, right? Not the public sector. I can't really talk about who it was for, but I was doing a security assessment at a data center and was there to meet a specific individual, and I was in the parking lot on my phone, and there was like a work truck out there, and I saw this dude come out of the door and prop it open with a spool of wire. And so I didn't even say goodbye to who I was on the phone with. I just literally hung up the phone and jumped out of my car. and I just walked in the front door of a data center in this highly secure facility on a piece of property that you shouldn't normally have access to. And it was alarming to the person that I was supposed to meet when I walked up to his desk and introduced myself. To the point that at the very end of my security assessment, he was like, "So, that part about how you got in
Did we
here, is that
pass?
is that gonna be in the report?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's gonna be in the report, bud. Like, that's front page right there."
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I, my head is spit. All right, I'm trying to get Monster to sponsor me, but if I have any more of this, my head will explode because I, wow, I get it, right? I get there's different views and perspective from the functional. Hey, I've got to get shit done. I've got to make it a little easier for me. I log in so many times because of timeouts and everything else. Guess what? Suck it up, buttercup, right? I'm not going to
Right.
leave something logged in all the time. I panic if I don't lock one of my computers when I leave it, right? Because I know there's plenty of other things that could be hackable because of legacy, this, that, the other. But to like a spool and a this and a tape, y'all need to learn not to do these things. You
Mhm.
need to communicate this out to the world. I know
Yep.
it's probably a few years back, and maybe some folks have learned because of the social media news and blah blah blah. But I guarantee it was still happening somewhere.
Oh, they definitely learned from my report, that's for sure. That was
Oh,
probably a great lesson for them. But in other instances, right, like if people pay attention, that's the biggest thing, right? Is paying attention to details. If people pay attention to details, they can often stop things. Like in one of the instances, I had an employee bring an email to my attention. They had received an email purporting to be from the CEO of a company. And it was the typical, preying on the whole immediacy, the urgency of like, hey,
urgency,
I
right?
need you to do this thing real quick. And they replied back and they were like, oh, okay, let me know these other details about it. Well, the next response that they got at the bottom of the email, it said sent from my iPhone, right? You know how that's like the default
Mm-hmm.
signature in mobile emails from Apple products. That sent from iPhone made them question it because they had just helped this employee with their Android phone because this CEO had switched from iPhone to Android, and the person that they emailed was answering a question for them about their new Android phone. So when they saw that sent from my iPhone, they immediately stopped and they were like, wait, they don't use an iPhone anymore. And so they forwarded it over to me and they were like, "Hey, can you see if this is like legit? Because, you know, this, that, and the other." And so I went through and looked at it and determined, I was absolutely fake. It was fairly easy for me to determine that with the email headers and stuff. But had they not paid attention, they would have made a wire transfer in the tens of thousands of dollars. Tens of thousands of dollars.
I,
So,
it still blows my mind. This one, especially in the last, I would say probably 6 months, the level of sophistication and quality that some of
mhm,
these emails are coming through. I'm not gonna lie. Every other week, I get what looks like a pristinely, like perfectly aligned PayPal email.
mhm,
And I use PayPal every now and then, this, that, and the other. I'm looking at headers, I'm looking at emails, I'm looking at response, I'm looking for character flips, right? Extended characters. I'm looking for all of it. And I'm going, this is pretty damn good. But I didn't order anything for 600 and something dollars, and I'm not going to transfer right, like money. But this level of sophistication is getting there. And to be able to pick up on little nuances like sent from iPhone and being able to put in the human connections, like, wait a minute, right? It's not
right.
easy, right? Because I mean, there may or may not have been a cybersecurity incident at a casino a year or so ago in the middle of the night, blah, 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 right? So the level of sophistication of when to prompt, when to attack, what to do, how to prompt it, is pretty damn, it's pretty damn gross. But also, having been in an organization where we had to look at fraud authentication, it's the priming up to that,
Right.
right? So, gee, every third Saturday of the month for the last 4 months, we see a spike in certain attempts. And then on the
Hmm.
fifth or sixth month, we see an inundation of attempts for a while at the middle of the night, 2, 3 in the morning, blah, blah, blah. Well, they were priming, they were testing, they were doing, right? And so walk us through what are the precursors to some of these things that you were like, huh, wait a minute, right? Which one of these is not like the other that you may have
Right.
seen or experienced?
Yeah, so I think a good example of that specifically is when I was assisting with an organization that had a large number of fraudulent credit cards that were being used to withdraw money from various ATMs. And we started going back and looking, and like you were mentioning on the third Saturday of the month, like people have patterns. They have patterns that they like to follow. Sometimes that's, a pattern of transactions. Sometimes it's a pattern of locations. And in this instance, it was both. It was a pattern of specific transaction amounts and orders at a specific order of properties around the city, and we were able to put together alerting that would basically notify us as soon as this pattern started to appear. And we had actually the Secret Service was on standby waiting for me to just be like, go, they're here. And we were able to identify, that this pattern was starting again. And they were able to apprehend and successfully prosecute a foreign national for this jackpotting scheme. And it was all just based on pattern recognition
Right.
because people are predictable.
I I may need a nap after this call, but I need to continue this story time because this is going to be like an ongoing series. First of all, I'm just going to call it out. Uh, so we're sitting here trying to understand, and I walk people through this on one of my slides. If I have time, I'll bring it up. But one of my slides, I talk about late '90s, right, and technology. Then I talk about 2010-ish, and then I talk about now. And I talk about script kiddies and the time when you could attach an executable to an email, right?
Mhm.
That kind of crap. And then I talk about 2010 where, that's the startup mode,
Right.
right? Then you've got the, SMB kind of launch mode, and now you have nation state mode, right? You've got highly sophisticated, highly distributed attacks and logic. And the difference between that process and corporations is they could switch on a flip of a dime. Corporations can't, right? Because they've got to go through budgets and committees and board members and this, and they've got to do planning and architecture and everything else. So they walk us through the quickest execution of a flip in a corporate or other, where whether or not you did an assessment or where they were like, oh shit, we need to act now, shut it down, put this up, blah blah blah. Walk us through an example. I know you have one. You've got to have
Yeah.
at least two, three, five,
I
right?
was gonna say, before you finish your question, I was already thinking of an example that,
I love
is
this.
perfect for this because there was a large number of organizations that were customers of a former company I worked for that started to get the WannaCry virus. And because we were the common vendor between all these different businesses, the immediate thought was like, oh, you must be to blame, right? Because we all use your system. Without stopping to think that, well, we also all use this other system too, or question things as to, okay, well, if everyone uses your product in this industry, why don't all of your customers have the WannaCry virus right now? Why is it only some of them? Or why is it only some locations owned by a specific corporation that are getting it? And we were able to do a lot of forensics on that, and it was really nice to have the partnership with our customers and be able to leverage some of their tools and expertise to kind of hone down on what the specific issue was. And it actually came back to being a time clock company that was responsible for these outbreaks because, it's systems that exist on a regulated network. And you would think that there's not that many, interconnections between that and the outside world. But it doesn't take much for things to start getting conflicted and confusing. And so that's when we as a business decided we wanted to make sure that we were never put in that position again where someone looked at our product and said, you know what? Yeah, we think you're the cause. And so we made security our differentiator within like a month. We had done some POCs with different products to try to isolate, number one, each of these systems from our own network where we were processing data, but also from each other at the same business location. And it really turned it around from being something we tacked on at the end to being baked in at the base level of this product. And it became a huge market differentiator for us. And that whole process happened within like about a month.
Wow. And you bring up what, and to every vendor that's out there that wants to sponsor this show, TPRM, right? You bring third party risk management, right? It's,
Right.
you can do everything. You could have the most educated employees, you could have the lockdown systems, you can't budge or go to the bathroom without badging, right? You could probably do everything possible, right? You can air gap the bathroom, right? But if your HVAC or your electricity company or something else has some level of integration, right? That thermostat becomes a death trap or that,
Hmm.
so wow, I love this. All right, I'm actually gonna go in. Let me just see how I don't even know how to do this. Hold on a second. I'm gonna share. I don't how do I do this? How do I do this? I need to share something. But I actually do want to go and share. I don't even know how to share my own damn screen. Present, sorry. Because I actually do want to share this window. And we are going to go over here because I actually do want to share this. Let me know if you're seeing a little MVP. Right, there we go. Okay. So this is the slide that I normally use, and this is why I love talking to folks about this. Oh, 1 second. No, let me go back. Gotta love it when this kind of stuff happens. Okay, so these are CVEs. This is not right. So I talk about the phishing, the low sophistication, hacking, and this is year after year after year. And these numbers were updated about a week or two ago, right? And this is what I talk about when I talk about educating in the importance of. Notice the difference between 2023 and 2024, right? It's
Hmm.
no longer just a gradual, it's a spike.
Right. Yeah,
Right?
it's
Now, are we
exponential.
on track? Right. Are we on track to beat that this year? I don't know, but what I do know is the level of importance in actually being able to stay educated, sophisticated, but also look at those third party people.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
Well, and earlier you were mentioning about, the escalation between the script kiddies to nation state level stuff and highly distributed attacks. But what's even more concerning to me, in the last couple years here has been like what Google did with server architecture, right? They commoditized it. That's what's happening with, these attack platforms where the distributed nature of these no longer takes sophistication because you can rent time on someone else's botnet. You know, it's
yep,
kind of a twisted version of it's in the cloud, right? Now
yep.
now you have these almost cloud-based platforms of attack where you can leverage this huge distributed set of compromised systems to attack a single endpoint without having to have had the sophistication to compromise them in the first place. All it
Um,
takes is a little bit of Bitcoin.
uh, 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 1 second. I got to type this so I could show this as a banner. Hold on a second. Right? It really is. That's
Yeah.
just to simplify it is because of the ecosystem that's been created, the tiers and levels of like it would take massive compute power and massive nation state cybersecurity in order to find the trail, right? The investment in time, right? If you're only pulling 10,000, 100,000 here and there isn't an alert that's going to be, noted to top level government pieces. You do that 100 times, maybe, right?
Right.
But it's the piecemealing component that drives me nuts. It's the nation state components around, and I know I'm adding a big fucking target to my back here, and I'm like, you know what? I got nothing to lose, right? Take my hardware, take my info, whatever. It's already out there anyway. But the nation state component around the ecosystem that's been created, how do we survive that? How do we educate that? What do we do? What do you suggest?
Honestly, it's a difficult thing to protect against. Implementing multi-factor authentication obviously is super important to kind of stem off some of the, credential stuffing attacks and that kind of thing that can be done with these distributed systems. And putting things like Cloudflare in between, your network edge and the public internet can help kind of stave off some of the distributed denial of service stuff. Um, but it's a constantly evolving landscape. It's hard to stay ahead of it because every time a new product comes out to get around that, or you make a change to get, be safer from a business perspective, the attackers are going to find a way to get around it. So that's really one of the things that fascinates me about security and why I get excited about what I do is that it's constantly changing. And, having that never-ending stream of things to learn is really satisfying. And I mean, it's amazing to see just the creativity behind attackers and how they get around things. Being able to kind of think like an attacker is really important. I know, it's probably sounds I
A
don't know,
little
cheesy.
nefarious there,
Right, like,
Victoria.
yeah, I know it sounds cheesy, right? But, like, being able to think like an attacker, having done some of these social engineering and physical penetration testing attacks that I've done, is it really opened my eyes to the way of thinking of the bad guy and understanding, well, if I just change this, or if I just pay attention to this piece of the human behavior, or if I get this information from that person and this little tidbit from someone else, and it seems innocuous when you get them from these two places, you put the two pieces of information together, and now, you have the full picture that you need to own an organization. So it's
Wow.
it's been fun and interesting being a part of the security world and watching it grow up.
Well, I'm gonna about 6 years ago, I went back to hardcore reading, and one of the first books that I picked up, recommendation, I can't remember why, was Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference. And I like the core topic of it, but actually, what really fascinated me, and if you're out there, government agents, was the behavioral analysis unit. And I'm a huge criminal minds and murder mystery, da, 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 and the psychology around the why.
Right.
Right. Yes, there's desperation, there's need, and then there's energies that you put things into, nefarious or positive, but the psychology around it, which is why I spent the last couple of years learning and practicing neuro linguistic programming, which is why I do a lot of behavioral analysis, why I also do a lot of meditation, because if I let all of this swirl in my head, I'd go batshit crazy and, would be locked. I'd be wearing a aluminum, aluminum hat, and all my doors and everything would be shut. But aluminum foil. So we've got folks in different trajectories in their career. If you're starting mid-career, otherwise, walk me through three suggestions of where you
Mhm.
think would be a good starting point for each one of them, or a good focal point for each one of them, senior leader, mid-career, or early, to say, these are things that I've seen. This is what I'm forecasting. Obviously, agentic, quantum, this, that, the other, but that would marry to the interests of what the market needs now? Because I think that's going to be one of those things that we can take away from here. You got stories, and I we could be here all day, but we only got like
Yeah.
5.
Oh wow, that went quick. Yeah, we've only got 5 minutes left. Um, yeah, I would say if you're getting started in cybersecurity, I would say definitely set your expectations reasonably, right? Don't think that you're going to come in and be making a six-figure salary right away. um, Really focus on understanding how computing systems work, right? If you don't understand, computer infrastructure and domains and network infrastructure and all of that, um, just having a security certification isn't really going to help you because you're not going to have that kind of intuitive uh, knowledge of where to look for issues. And then for people, further along in their career that are moving in towards management is really focusing on people. I think my experience with social engineering has helped me a lot from a management perspective, not because I want to social engineer my employees, but it gives me more tools to be able to communicate effectively with people from all different technical levels. And that's really important when you start getting into management, is being able to kind of bridge the gap between, we've got the nerds in the server room that are doing the thing, and we've got the nerds making the
Hey,
software
hey,
that
hey,
we
hey,
market doing the thing.
hey,
Hey, I'm
hey.
one of them. I'm one of the nerds.
Okay. All right, fine.
But being able to take that and translate that into business speak, right? And being able to explain complex technical issues to an executive without making them feel like you're being condescending or talking down to them. Because you have to recognize and understand what the technical competency is of every person you talk to when you're in management.
Right.
Because, sometimes executives, for whatever reason, have a technical past. Maybe they were in SIGINT in the military, or maybe they did help desk stuff before. And being able to communicate effectively with as few words as possible, especially if you're talking to an executive, is really important. And the one thing that we didn't get into on this, and we don't have time to go through the whole thing, is uh, switching a company from being security averse to security first really comes down to making them understand risk and what things cost, right? They know how much buying a product costs. You need to make them understand how much it's going to cost if they lose their golden egg, whether that be customer data or intellectual property or, employee tribal knowledge that has been gained over a 20-year career by someone that they're about to piss off, that's going to leave. And so making them understand what the cost of things are helps justify spend on things. And I just had this conversation. I was at a hackerspace in Fullerton for OC 2600 the other day, and I was explaining to one of the attendees there specifically how to quantify risk, because they were having issues with management understanding that it either needed to be addressed or formally accepted. And I walked them through the process of figuring out what is the single loss expectancy, what is the annualized loss expectancy, how does that relate to what the OPEX spend would be to resolve that risk. Um, and those are the kinds of things that, when you're in management, super important to be able to understand how to quantify and convey risk to executives, because that
I
will
love
go a
this.
long ways in making sure that you're able to get budget for the things you need.
Yeah. And one little magic piece that you added in there that I was able to flip in my career is how to actually take OpEx and see how you can make a capex by enhancing a tool, enhancing a feature, or right, creating a new product line or whatever that is, so that's not just always opex. And if
Right.
you don't know what opex is, and if you don't know what capex is, look it up. Get to the business speak, right? Because
Yeah.
that's whoo. Okay, nap time. Because I don't know how much more of this I could take, Victoria. Where can people find you? What are you doing these days? Because we got to wrap up. Oh my gosh, we need another
Well,
hour.
I'm presently looking for my next full-time gig, as a chief information security officer, which is what I was just most recently doing. And then as far as finding me, feel free to look me up on LinkedIn. It's linkedin.com/in/Victoria Doring, spelled like it is on the screen there. And that's probably the best way to get a hold of me.
I love this. And in Infraguard, Nevada, you are lucky to have Victoria, and because that I'm just saying that man, the stories, the experience, and the energy. I love this. Stay awesome, and let's continue our conversations
Yeah.
because we I'm just saying, if you don't even know what InfraGard is, look it up, people, right? See if you want to get involved. There's plenty of other organizations, obviously ISSA, ISC, ISACA, CSA. There's tons of organizations you can learn from. But IESA Cyber Tech Impact, I've supported a lot of different programs. Get involved, put in the energy. Thank you, Victoria, for being incredible. Next time I really am going to make popcorn, and I'm just going to like go off screen and just eat. Even though I don't like popcorn, but if you add a lot of butter, I'll take it. Um,
Yeah.
so thank you. Stay awesome, and I'm looking forward to our next chat and see
Yeah,
how we can
absolutely. It'd be
collaborate.
great to be back.
Yes. All right. Thanks again, everyone. Enjoy. I just close it out, and that's it. So stay awesome, folks.